start with my screen sharing, and we'll just give it. We'll just begin, and the participants can ask anytime whichever question they have. But yes, if they have any advanced question which will belong to the second or third day's topic, then I will not answer it right now. Then you have to note it down and you'll ask tomorrow, and then I can answer it tomorrow. So just not to disrupt all the things. All right, are we okay? Can someone please confirm me that the screen is sharing?
The screen has been shared.
Sorry, can just someone confirm me? Can you all see the screens? The art of looting.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, perfect. Okay, then let's begin. As I just said that today we will be introducing the basic topic of mooting and its importance. So, and the reading of moot problem. So we'll begin with it. Okay, so exactly what does mooting mean? Before I just start, I'll ask you guys, what is your perspective on mootings? So anybody can raise the hand, and Mr. Gulshan can allow him or her to answer the question. What is exactly your meaning of mooting? And I'll just hide the slide in case you'll read and tell me. Anybody? Shahrukh Kumar has raised her hand. Yes, Shahrukh.
Yes, ma'am. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, if I am audible, please make sure.
Yes, Walaikum salam. You're audible.
Actually, mooting, talking to mooting, it's a kind of art in a way that we present our issues, and in an effective way. We use legal terms, especially what we do in mooting. That first of all, we make a memorial. After setting or drafting memorial, we present that memorial, that which is based on facts, statements, and whatsoever the issues are between the parties. We first make issues or frame the issues, then give the shape of memorial. Then that memorial is being submitted to the judge. Then judge reads it out, and we do rebuttal, surrebuttal. These kind of things are included in moot.
All right. You have some kind of idea about it. Okay, Gulshan. Sorry, Shahrukh Kumar. Yes. So, if anybody else is willing to answer that question, so we can take your answer. But if not, then we can just start with my answer of this question. Is there anybody else? I believe there is no one, right? Okay, let's start with my answer. Looting is an extracurricular activity, of course. In law, we must have seen we have seen it from the beginning of the medical studies, that they have practical aspects as well. They have their practicals, they have their laboratories, they go for the what we call it, house jobs. But in law, there is no such kind of activity involved where the participants could actually go and practice their advocacy skills, their research skills, which are the like prominent part of law. So if a lawyer, or if anybody who is a law student, right, or who will not join the litigation but is still a law student, will go for the CSS, will go for the other activities or other professions. But during that 5 years of LLB, everybody has to understand the main thing, that law is all about research, law is all about drafting, law is all about conveying and pursuing people for your point of view, for your legal point of view, not just social and any other point of view. So therefore, this activity had been introduced in our studies. Unfortunately, it is not that necessary, or it is not given that much importance nowadays. Or a past decade, I am seeing that which importance it is getting in the outer world, in the foreign countries, where they have this compulsory subjects. They have introduced it in even the first year or second year of the students. But in our scenario, mooting is just a subject which is given its place in final year. Now that is very absurd, according to me. When a student is just now, I am in the final year. If I would imagine, if I would have started it in the final year with just a subject, then I would not have dealt it in a very you can say with a very zealous way. I would not have been very motivated that mooting is something that I should do or not. I'll just do it for marks. That's me. That would be anybody that would have been introduced the mooting in the final year. So therefore, that's very absurd to put it in that place. We should have it in the first year or second year, so that the students could actually enhance their abilities and could actually make the most out of it. Make the most out of this activity. Uh, Going again to the basics, that what does mooting exactly mean? So that's an extracurricular activity, because we know now that why it is extracurricular activity and not a main element or main subject like house job or any other activities that the medical students are going for. Uh, it is basically where demo kind of moot court is set up, where there are three judges, four judges, and there are two teams of participants, which are also being can be called as the you know which are replaced by parties, if we consider it that way. So this kind of environment is set up in a very competitive way, to have that have that zeal, that emotions in the activity. Otherwise it would have been very boring if there would be no kind of competition in the thing. So there two teams participate. They argue in favor of a petitioner or against of the petitioner, like a respondent, and they try to pursue the judges as it has been done in the local courts, in or international courts, or everywhere in the real courts. So with this, they start to understand why we are learning all kind of laws, what's the application procedure, and how exactly the things will turn out if we are quoting that laws in the courtrooms, and trying to convey judges that this is right, this is legal, and therefore you should rule in our way. So this is a kind of very basic introduction of mooting. And moot court competitions, again, the competition word is added, the competition scenario is added for making it more zealous, more emotional. And it is very emotional when you are in the moot courts. I do remember when I was doing my first seventh intra in the college. So I was very emotional at that time. I was very competitive. I was like that I have to do this no matter what. I have to understand that what this practice means and how this will make me evolve as a law student. And it has done it, and it has evolved me as well. So yeah, this was the basic thing. And now if we proceed towards the formats of moot courts, as Shahrukh has explained it nicely, that there are two stages of the moot court competitions. We divided it into two things, which the organization uh, that is kind of organizing the moot courts. It has two aspects. Number one is memorial, and number two is oral rounds. So first they give you a moot problem, where you have to scrutinize the moot problem, and you have to make two memorials in the favor of applicant and in the favor of respondent as well. You have to submit it, and then finally in the oral rounds you have to plead it before the honorable court. You do not have to go away from your memorial. You do not have to make things very different when you are speaking, and what you have actually written in the memorial. But you can certainly add a bit of new things, or new research that you have done after submitting memorials, that you can also tell the judges in the oral rounds. So there are again two teams I just said, and in moot courts, what is different from the real courts, that we submit two memorials on behalf of respondent, and on behalf of petitioner or applicant. We do it because the whole purpose of mooting is to make you understand that how you have to plead your case before the honorable court. And if you can plead a kind of very not what can we say here, that the case is not very much favorable to your side. For example, the petitioner side is more legal or is more correct than the respondent side. So while you are preparing the respondent side, or when you are pleading the respondent side, you will also know that what kind of where does it lack, what kind of legal implication it does not have, and that's why it's a very weak case. But that will also make you understand and make you more able to kind of take weak cases as well, because in real courts we do not know the case is strong or the case is weak, but you have to plead it, you have to make your client successful in that case. And therefore this activity is designed in a way that you plead both sides, you research on both sides, so therefore you know that which kind of side is very strong and which kind of side lacks some kind of legal implications, and then you have to cover it. And when you cover it, when you kind of pursue the judges in your favor, that's where an advocate is made actually. And while speaking of this, I remember my Jezeb experience when I was doing it in last April in 2023. I had a very difficult issue in the applicant side, and I had to prove that why the rigorous sanctions, the blanket sanctions are imposed by our client is perfect and good, how they are legal. Being from a country like Pakistan, where sanctions had been introduced, where sanctions have been imposed multiple times, it was very difficult for me to kind of have a straight face before the judge and say that yes, sanctions are very legal until you do not put them in a way. So I have to customize the whole arguments, the whole problem in a way, and put it in and put it before the honorable court, so that they can kind of understand that yes, okay, sanctions are perfectly fine, which they were not. Even a bit of it was not legal, but I had to do it because, of course, the weak side of case you have to also plead. You cannot always get a strong case. So this what makes you. This is what the purpose of the mooting is, that it makes you very able to do such kind of activities. Okay. If anybody has any query regarding these two slides, they can ask me any time. They can raise the hand, and then Gulshan Kumar will give them a way to ask. Okay, and don't shy away. In such kind of environment, in online environments, I was also very negligent in this way, that I couldn't ask more questions. I was like, no, the speaker will, at the end of it, the speaker will cover it anyway, but this doesn't happen much. So kind of, so please, you are all invited to ask anything in between. All right. Now let's move to the next slide, which is the courtroom environment. So if you can see that this is one of the pictures of my experience in Jezeb National Rounds, where we were runner-up this last January. And this is how the courtroom environment, if anybody is not been to there, and inshallah they will be there soon. So this was in Nust, and we were I guess we were in semi-final. So there I'm sitting in the council desk number 2 because I was the second speaker, and this is my very great friend which is the oralist here, and now the other team is the council desk, right? And the third guy which is sitting with us is the researcher here. So in the moot courts, there are typically in a team there are 3 members, and if you go for the international moot courts, the researcher is permanent, so the researcher cannot speak in your round, right? So there are 2 speakers and 1 researcher. And again, the next slide is now here. If you can see, the courtroom environment is basically similar to the environment of the real courts. But the thing is that in real courts, there are only team of legal people like your lawyers, which are sitting in front, like we are sitting in front, and in the back of the room, your client will be sitting. But in moot courts, there are no such client. There are only, of course, they are moot. They are not real, fictional. They are, so there are only audiences sitting there. So it's basically kind of environment set that you can actually understand, and you will not lack confidence when you'll go in the real course. Though it will be a bit different, of course, but this is what they have tried to make that the students could see before they could go, right? And there are lastly the court readers. In the real courts, there are court readers, right? The people who are just before sitting before the judges, they are typing mostly the judgments and all. They are doing all the things. But in the moot court environment, there are bailiffs. Because moot courts cannot go whole day like the Supreme Court's recent pleadings or the oral rounds, but it has a certain time limit. So the court bailiffs are what they do is they maintain the time. They see that okay, the 20 minutes are given to first speaker, and the first speaker has no other option than to complete his or her respective arguments in that 20 minutes. If the judge is pleasant with the arguments of the oralist, then the judge is at discretion to award him any much time. Like the judge can award him even 20 minutes more if the organization is not saying anything to the judge. But that's how it works, right? And this time barrier also makes you very quick in your task, while you be subtle when you are doing the leading and you are pursuing the judges and you're answering their questions, right? So this is a somewhat I thought that it would help you if anybody has not been there. So this is a basic introduction to mooting and the moot court competitions. How does it take place and what are the stages of the moot court? And now we will move towards the moot problem. So I have just put it a moot problem of my time at Henry Dunant. This was the national rounds moot problem, prosecutor versus Major Latia Duterte. So this moot problem was the one where we started to actually, entered into the world of moot courts, of national and international moot courts. And to begin with, the moot problem, it is kind of a factual sheet that is given to you, and more specifically, it's a story that is given to you, so that you have to be confined in that whole story. You will see that in this story, what are the issues, what is the story going to tell you, what are the geographical limits, and what else you could use to, in favor of your arguments, whether you are in the respondent side or in the petitioner side. Because in the real moot courts, it happened that there are no such kind of moot problems given. Only the clients tell their lawyers that this is their story. The petitioner will tell his story, the respondent will tell his story. But there's no such kind of agreement of facts, right? In the moot court, the moot problems is designed specifically for both of the parties. So there will be neutral aspects given in the moot problem, and it is mentioned that this is the statement of agreed facts. So anybody cannot deny what is present in the moot problem, right? But the moot problem, but you can scrutinize in kind of your favor as well. So there's a very technical thing here that you cannot exactly deny, but you're kind of denying as well. No, this doesn't happen. This didn't happen, or this happened, but it is specifically that happened that time, or in another scenario. So it doesn't fit legally here. So you can play around with this, but you cannot specifically say no, Your Excellency, the paragraph number 6 in the moot problem does not exist, or it is not believable. So this cannot happen. If you will anyway, if you'll do it in the moot courts, you are going to lose your marks. The judge will shout at you. The judges will say that you do not have a basic knowledge of moot problems or how the moot courts run. How are you here? So do not ever do this, that you are saying that this problem does not exist. Do not make up your facts. The moot problem author has already done it for you. You have to just scrutinize it. Just you have to use it in your favor or against the other speakers, right? Okay. We can start with the how to read the moot problem. So this is here's a backstory. When I was starting my 7th intra or the mooting journey, there were sessions in our college, and in there I asked the teacher asked me, who was again my mentor in the future. He asked us that how do you read a moot problem, right? So, or what do you do when you are starting with the mood problem? When you get the mood problem, when you get that PDF in your emails. So I just started saying, I said, yes, sir, you have to just see that first what does law it has, what kind of facts it have, how many paragraphs are there, how many issues are there, and he was said, hold on, you first print it, and then you start to read it. And I was so pissed at his answer that what is this? We are doing a serious business here. How can you say that just print it and then you can start it? This he was making it a making a light environment just to start a heated kind of discussion on how to read the mood problem. So that always remains with me that first you have to print out the mood problem and then you have to start with it. That's not actually how it starts. If you are more of a kind of technological person, or you are more kind of Gen Z, what we call now the people, so you can start with the laptop thing and you can start with the PDF thing as well. So yeah, this was just a short story that I had to share with you. But okay, if we start with the actually how to read the mood problem without printing it, or print it as you like it. Mm, so we can start with these things. That first of all, I have written it in the bold letters that judges cannot compromise on the fact sheet. Judges can also compromise on law for a bit. It's not that the judges will compromise on law. If you do not have any kind of law, they will just say, okay, nice, if the guy or girl or the girl is speaking or quoting the facts correctly. It's not that as well. But what kind of judge I am, I like to not compromise on the facts, because facts are legit given to you. You do not have to do any other kind of activity regarding it, right? If you cannot quote the paragraphs, if you cannot understand or remember the lines of the paragraph, that your excellency, this happened that day, how this petitioner is had spoken at that event. If you cannot point it out, then what's the point? What I will do with your law? Because law is something that you have to search it, so it might be difficult for people. But the mood problem is given to you. You have to just remember it. And if a speaker has not a sharp memory, cannot recall the facts by being on the dice, and that's such a problematic thing a judge can witness. And judges are very harsh on those speakers which do not recall facts as well. So you have to kind of revise it daily till your till your oral rounds arrive, and then you will be able to understand and recall it even when you are sleeping. So you have to do this kind of practice. um I'm speaking continuously. I want to know that all the participants are with me, or they are just sleeping, or they are not kind of very interested in this thing. Are you all listening? Do you have any queries?
Yeah, ma'am, we are here.
Yes,
Actually,
ma'am.
it's quite interesting. That's why we are
Listening.
listening carefully.
All right, all right. No, I was like, okay, where are all the participants? Am I just talking to myself? This happens in the online things. Okay, never mind. Let's start with the mood problem. Okay, first you have must read it, that note the subject matter. By subject matter, what I mean is that you have to see that what kind of law, what kind of uh, story is given to you, whether it's on environmental law, whether it's something that a kind of domestic law, whether it's violent, whether it's abusive, whether it's a marriage where domestic violence has happened, whether it's a rape case. Subject matter, you have to see that, okay, on what subject matter the story is premised, what the author has been motivated, from where he or she has been motivated to make this story. And this always helps you when I remember in our international rounds of Red Cross. So when you win Henry Dunant, or when you even a runner up in the Henry Dunant, the Asia Pacific rounds are called Red Cross. So when we were representing Pakistan in the Red Cross, and we had a completely new mood problem. So this problem that I just showed you in the last slide did not follow us. We got a completely new mood problem, where the subject matter, which I luckily found, it was just in Hong Kong. There was some kind of people, or riots happening, and they were being what you call that? They were being monitored by the state government in a very AI motivated kind of scenario. So the author has taken that story and premised his mood problem on that aspect. And when I found it, and I was like, okay, fine. Then I got an idea. Then I got a picture of the mood problem. Okay, this is what the author has been motivated, and then I followed that Reuters, and then I followed the story in the Hong Kong, which was going on, and then I actually found arguments from it. Sometimes this happens, and you are just blown up that okay, this is the story, so the author must have been motivated by it, and then you can actually go for the thing. So I just listened the interviews, the riots that were happening, the police sides interviews, the protesters interviews, how they were being locked up, how they were being monitored, how their mobiles, phones, and messages were being monitored, how their end-to-end encrypted settings were made. All of this was very fascinated when you are getting the picture. So that's how I began, and I remember that I had shared with my colleagues and my teachers, and they were very impressed with my research on the subject matter. That okay, wow, you got a picture, and of course you will. Now we can move forward or more in a better way. So this also helps. Please, whenever you receive a mood problem, kind of go with the subject matter first, or try to find the stories. Always this happens that whenever a mood problem is made, the speaker, the author has its motivation from some kind of story going on in the world. So you have to just, kind of just look here and there that where exactly he has taken this. Mm. And the second thing is that you have to consider that what the law has been used. So whether it's a domestic law or it's an international law, right? If I can share a mood problem with you, I guess that will be very helpful. Mm, this is how a mood problem looks. And I have just kind of highlighted the portions which are the basic construction of a mood problem, and it will help you to understand what exactly or how exactly it is made, right? So now this is written at pre-trial chamber, Mr. Kim Mangu, right? So this means that at the Hague, Netherlands, this means that that's an ICC's judge mood problem, and that means it's international law, international criminal law, right? The IHL will be involved here, which is just mentioned in the Rome Statute, Article 8 to be 1, right, and Article 28 of Rome Statute. So this is how you can fast forward and you can get that okay, what the mood problem is premised on. And the second is note the court and its jurisdiction. Now, if that's a mood problem of international court, so here it is not mentioned that what kind of jurisdiction it will have, but ICC Rome Statute has jurisdiction on the people who, in Article 12 or 13, the states or the people who have actually signed the Rome Statute, who are actually the parties of the Rome Statutes, right? So sorry, I have a bit of cold in that environment, but okay, never mind. So you can see that what kind of court it has, what kind of jurisdiction it has, right? The ICC will only have its jurisdiction on the people who are abiding by the Rome Statute, who are signing it, or where one party is a party to the Rome Statute and its territory is involved in the war zone. Then also there are chances that in the moot courts, of course, not in the real courts, because in real courts it will be very difficult for ICT to premise its jurisdiction on such parties and places. So in the moot courts, it works well that if one party is sorry. So if one party is a party to Rome Statute, and that party is involved in the war zone, or that party's premises, the area of that party is in the country or any kind of city or province is involved, then the jurisdiction of the ICC will work there. Or in the domestic scenario, if we can take an example of domestic courts, this is a moot problem. You can see the screens, right? Anybody can confirm me. Can you see the screen? The chief election commissioner versus Anfar Khan. Hello? You guys are able to see that?
No, ma'am.
The screen is
No,
not
ma'am.
shared. Okay, wait a second. For how long the screen was not being shared? Okay, let's do it again. Since the beginning. And now, can
Now
you
it's
all
visible.
see now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Kindly tell me when the screen stops sharing, all right? Okay, so we were on the domestic mood problems. It's still sharing, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay. So let's start with the domestic mood problem. You will see that it's the Supreme Court. It's before Honorable Supreme Court of Pakistan, and that's the court. And now the jurisdiction of the court of Supreme Court is mentioned here. I guess it's you can see that in the issues that what kind of issues are given. If the issues do not specifically now the issues here they do not specifically mentions that the jurisdiction aspect of the court, right? So you'll just see that okay, it will be a petition either or it will be kind of original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. So you'll just in the memo and you'll add it for the purposes of because the issue doesn't involve any kind of jurisdictional question. So you'll just add that okay, we are here in the court by the original jurisdiction of the court or the petitioner or the petitioner or what kind of jurisdiction it has. Mm. You guys know that what kind of jurisdiction I couldn't recall the word exactly. Well, yeah, so this is how it works. And can you guys again tell me that you can see this PPT draft, how to effectively read a mood problem? Okay, I have to reshare it, I guess. Now can you all see that? All right, perfect. So we have been covering these points, the subject matter, the law, it's either domestic or international, and now the court and its jurisdiction is done. Now, when you will see the mood problem, the first structure of the mood problem is uh, it is the geographical aspect. Okay, now this is how the first paragraph looks like, the yellow thing that I have highlighted. It relates to geography of the places. In every mood problem, you'll find the beginning lines, right? You all guys can see now. I got to understand how to share it again and again. I guess you all can see it. The statement of agreed facts. Okay, perfect. Yes. So the first paragraph will be of always the geography of the places, like two countries and how much GDP they have, how to our what area they are stretched, and what kind of the features of the country. So it will start the story, and the following paragraphs will always tell you about the history of their conflict or their relationship with each others or yes, or the basis of enmity. So it will kind of build up the story for you guys. And the final paragraphs, that will either start from the fifth or sixth paragraph. It will basically start the the outrage, the conflict on which the story is actually premised. So the history is there, the geography is there, and now the actual story has begun. You have to kind of maintain and remember every kind of fact that this new problem has involved in it. So this is the length of the story. That this will basically tell about the issues that which party filed the missiles first, which party will had then replied, and what kind of functions the government did when the war was going on, if that's ISL involved new problem, right? And that's how the story goes on. So these are all the paragraphs that I listed that are the main story for the facts of the case. And in last, of course, there are charges, there are issues. There in this problem, there are three charges, and you will see that the first one is that whether the status of the people is that they are prisoner of war or civilians. The second one is the command responsibility of for attacking civilians intentionally. And number third is the command responsibility again for intentionally directing attacks against civilian objects, right? So this is how it goes on. And now, if we kind of understand that how to effectively, now this is the structure of the mood problem, right? You guys got it that what will be the main facts of the story, how it goes on. Now to just give it a read like a story, like any other story. After doing that, you have to first make it. This is my habit, my and my very good friends habit that or which where we meet in mood courts. We both do a thing that you guys can see that I have highlighted the dates as well, right? The dates in each paragraph, like this was 18 September 22, this is 20 September, and this is 8 January. So I make a bullet points where I start with the dates in the mood problem, and then I added that, okay, this is the timeline. That's how the conflict started or was and kind of evolved. And these are the main incidents that happened in that, or that are the main incidents which happened this is specific date. This really, helps you, first of all, memorize the mood problem. And second of all, it makes you more engrave. I'll share the slides, of course. This also makes you kind of more into in the story. You are basically in that story. Okay, on that day this happened, and that day this happened. This really makes it easier for all of you to kind of gauge the story, right? So that's how this you go for the structuring of the mood problem. Now, yeah, that's the point I just made, that you have to note the timeline of the mood problem. Now, go for the difficult words or or the new words, right? I had this habit that whenever I get a mood problem, I consider the difficult words. I have to look for their meanings. I have to see that what they mean actually. So there was a mood problem in Henry Dunant again. There was a word, a very new word was added in the mood problem, which was very new for my dictionary. So I searched it out, and it basically means that the churches was very primitive and they were destroyed. They were only kind of remains there. So that's how I got to understand, okay, this church that has been attacked is not basically in function. So in IHL, it happens a lot. If a civilian thing is not in function, and if a civilian object is not in function, and there are no people around, and that's a military target, so you can kind of attack it, even if it's a church, even if it's a religious place. So that also helped me in my formulation of argument, right? And now the second point is that note the technical aspects of the mood problem as well. So this also again happened with me in the Henry Dunant again, which was my first mood court, where we were dealing with a cyber attack thing, right? So there was a museum where many artifacts were placed, and that museum was, artifacts are kind of structures which if I have to explain, the museum we have in Hyderabad, right? There are certain artifacts mentioned there as well, the placed there as well. But they are not they're not this way that they will get damaged if they'll be heated more, right? the but these kind of artifacts that were used in my mood problem, were destroyed because the cyber attack happened, and they just did what they turned off the special setting of museum where the artifacts were placed. So the artifacts were damaged by the when the special settings were off, and that's how they placed a cyber attack. They damaged their heritage, which was confined in the artifacts. So by just searching out that how artifacts are kept in the museums and what are the special settings which can be done in the museum, you can, formulate a new argument in your moot court. And I was praised by my teacher for this thing, that okay, we just got an argument that they had done a cyber attack, otherwise it would not have been. Otherwise, in war zones it happens that whenever you fire a missile or you enter in the building forcefully, which is in the case of genocide of Gaza is happening now. They are breaking in the buildings. They are doing the most mm, cruel things that can ever be done, but they're not playing with the cyber attacks yet. So this is how you can distinguish it, right? And the last point is that learn about the acts that are mentioned in the mood problem first. Okay, now this is something which is mostly done in the domestic mood problems. I'll share one mood problem with you that is of domestic, which we just had looked up on. Okay, this is Federation versus Anfar Khan. Again, the mood problem of the case before the Supreme Court. Now, you will see one different thing in the mood problems of domestic law and in the mood problems of international law. Here, you all can see that the act is mentioned here, Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act 2018. Can you just confirm me? Right. Now, this is what distinguishes it from the international law moot problem. The act is mentioned here, right? So whenever you are getting such kind of moot problem where the acts are mentioned, go look up at that act. Go understand every aspect, the preparation of the act when the act was being made, the commentary of the act, the preamble of the act, the article which is mentioned. Of course, you have to kind of understand it always. Like this article has been mentioned here under Article 2, 1, and 3, right? So this is how you do that, and it actually helps you. Or we have the Constitution mentioned here, Article 25, 2 of the Constitution of Pakistan, right? Go find every possible thing you have for the Article 25 clause 2 of Constitution, because that's a kind of clickbait for you guys. That's a Pandora box which is open for you guys, that you can, just take everything out from it. So this is what really helps you when you are going for the domestic mood problems. Or there we can see that freedom of speech enshrined in Article 19 of Constitution of Pakistan, right? That's how it will always helps you. And now, what else I can share is, okay, this is the basics of reading effectively a mood problem. If anybody has any query regarding the mood problem or how to scrutinize it, you guys are welcome. You can ask right now. Do we have any questions regarding it? I guess you guys all learned it quite well. So should I just go forward with the importance of mooting right now? All on board?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Kindly proceed further.
Okay. Why the screen is not sharing? I guess there's a question in the comment section. How can we participate in international moot court competition? Okay, first of all, for international moot court competition, the organizations which are organizing it, you can participate without your team, without your college team, without your college support as well, or you can participate with the support of your college. So basically, when a college considers a team for their international competition, they will register your name. They will register your name under their institution. They will assign you a coach, and then the proceedings begin. And it's same that you will first have to submit the memorial. You have to first pay the registration fees as well, which is mostly in dollars or in pounds, right? And then you have to submit your memorial. Then you have to go for the oral rounds. If they are funding you, that's perfect. If they're not funding you, of course you have to pay it out from your own money. And if the college is not supporting you, then you can self-register your team as well. You can get a coach anywhere. Nowadays, what we can do is that, because I can see there's a good uh, the people are enthusiastic about the mootings, about the moot court competition. So there are many former moot court participants which are willing to be your coaches for the independent teams as well. They will get the certificate, they will get their CV, written up with that certificate, and you'll get the coach which will make you understand every inch of the moot problem, every inch of moot court competition. So you basically go with them, you register it yourself, and many competitions do not even ask that which kind of institute you are there. So you have this setting as well to participate in the moot court competitions. The moot court competitions which are international, which are funded as well, is, I guess, Henry Dunant, of course. The national rounds are well funded. You will get a ticket, you'll get accommodation, travel allowances and everything. And for international rounds, if you win, or even you are even you are a winner, then you can go for the international rounds as well. They will the ICRC worldwide, or the Hong Kong ICRC, which is basically involved in that in the international rounds, will help you with the fundings as well. Or there's another moot court which is John Pictet. But John Pictet is partially funded, so you have to score up in the questionnaire which they provide you. And if you win that questionnaire, if you are first in that, then you will get the funding from the ICRC of the ICRC again, John Pictet, for John Pictet. You will either get the travel allowance, or I guess accommodation allowances as well. For ICC as well, your memorial should be good enough to make you win that scholarship as well, and that will be partial again. Partially, you have to do it. You have to do it on your own. The Jessup, Philip C. Jessup was mm, the Philip C. Jessup was also funded first of all, but now it is not funded anymore. We have to go with our college support, and we have to also pay our money as well. I guess Concord Law is raising hand. Where is Gulshan?
क्वेश्चन है.
Sorry.
Hello. Am I audible? Hello.
Hello.
अच्छा, मेरा ये क्वेश्चन था कि अगर हम कनकड़ की टीम भेजना चाहें, इंटरनेशनल जो भी होती है कंपटीशन, तो भेज सकते हैं हम?
I guess you can send it there, because there are many competitions nowadays. There is one competition which is arbitration. Viz moot court is basically surrounding there. So you can also read the guidelines and ask them in the in kind of through email, that they do require an organization, or they do require a kind of institution, or if they are okay with the participants as well. Because I just know that in ICC, I know one guy who has gone without his college support. So you can go there as well. ICC moot court competition. You can ask them always. There are some other questions which I think we should take. Whoever is the moderator, kindly allow them.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
My name is Umar Jad. I am from Islamia College, University, Peshawar. and I have came with two topics for this today. Firstly, for the fact I, with my colleague, had participated in national rounds of the Wismoot competition of this year.
Umar, can you just speak up a bit loud?
Okay, so I will add up two things to your conversation. The first is a very factual thing that I would like to explain about myself. I am from Peshawar, Islamic College University, and I'm participating in WIS international national rounds of the Wismoot arbitration. And the second one, I would like a question from you. That is, can we use penal codes as an argument for our arbitration or for our moot court problems? Because lastly, I was participating in CLLB, Center of Law and Business moot court competition. That was a national rounds, and there we get heavily criticized by our honorable adjudicator on the basis that penal codes are meant only for the offenses, punishment of offenses. You cannot, they said, like, you cannot present it here in the arguments. I would like some explanatory notes from your side.
I'm very sorry, but I just couldn't listen half of your arguments. I was trying very hard. Can you possibly type it if there is a problem of sound? Because I just understand that there are two questions, that you are from Islamia University, and some mentions of the arbitration board code and another national that you had. I just had this in my mind. I could only gain this from your thing. Can you just type it?
Okay, sure, I will type it out.
So you're typing it, right? Or if anybody else could understand his question, they can also, speak it out. Hello? Okay, Umar, I got your question. You just asked that can you add penal codes in your memorial drafting, right? So you'll add only penal codes like CRPC or PPC, or any other kind of harassment or any other things that are majorly criminal in itself. Not in itself, but they are dealing with the criminal aspects. You can only add it when the moot problem requires. Now, just add, I explained in the moot previously in the moot problem, that you have to note the law first. You have to know the subject matter. You have to see that what kind of law has been used there, whether it's a civil thing, whether it's a criminal thing, whether it's a rape case, of course, it's a criminal thing. If that's a check involved, and the check involved is not, the petitioner has not asked for the article for 498 F something. This is a PPC's principle, PPC section for the check, the dishonorment of check. Then you will use in that aspect. If the only if the moot problem requires you. If you are going before ICJ, that's a civil court. You will not go with the Rome statute there. You cannot apply Rome statute there. You will have to apply the United Nations statute and other statute relevant, kind of relevant things there. Only if the issue demands. So now in JESF, when we were doing that in April 2023, I guess, yeah, 23. So there were two issues that were concerning from IHL, that had an aspect of IHL, and then there are two issues that were completely civil in nature. And I was the unluckiest one in the team where when I got the civil things. My friends got the ISL issues, So I had a grip on those issues, but of course you have to choose, you have to think that, okay, fine, that issue will be done by other teammates. You have to go for the other issues, which are very boring. I got the sanctions issue, and then the last issue was on environmental law. So both were having any, they were not even close to criminal law. I have to just, go for the environmental law, go for the sanctions law, and go for the civil aspects. And I have to scrutinize it in that manner. I couldn't use any kind of penal law there because there was no point of using penal law in the civil law, right? So I hope that helps with you, that answers your question. And now I guess we should give the place to Shahrukh Kumar.
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible to you? Please kindly make sure.
Yes,
Hello, am I audible to you?
please.
Yes, actually, my question is that, ma'am, if I am not wrong, during the slides, during the lecture, we missed one or two things are here or we will get in future. That is rebuttal and surrebuttal. These two things have been missed, or we will learn ahead. I don't know. Kindly tell these things also so that other participants can understand in a better way. And my question is that kindly, ma'am, uh, share your experience in moot court competition, whether you have participated in national moot court competition or international moot court competition.
Oh, okay, Shahrukh, I got you. First of all,
In international moot court competition, that is international environmental moot court competition, which was
sorry, what you are saying right now?
Yes, ma'am.
I couldn't hear the last thing that Shahrukh told right now. In international competitions, what else?
Yes, ma'am. I have participated in moot court competition. That was international moot court competition organized by Florida University, United States of America. It was virtually held, and it was, very interesting moot court competition. So I want you to, ma'am, to answer the question is that okay, national and international moot court competitions are different. So kindly, can you share your experience so that other students and participants can understand which one is beneficial and how and in what sense they are beneficial?
Okay, all right. Shahrukh, see, I will answer your first question in our third day when we will be where you ask about the rebuttals, because that majorly concerns with oral pleading. And for now, the experience of moot courts of international nature and national nature. So it's I haven't got any experience of national moot courts personally as a speaker. Because when I did my intra, and I was approached by my teacher for the Henry Dunant, which was an international moot court competition. And after we successfully won it, the next competition that I got offered was Philip C. Jaser. And these both competitions are majorly going for 6 months and 8 months long competition. So when I started my journey of mooting in second year, because in first year, of course, COVID got hit, and I was not pretty sure that whether I should start it now, whether or I should just look for my academics first, because being a student or intermediate student and then finally getting in your in getting your law college, it's a whole together different thing when you are in 1 year you are reading about chemistry, chemistry things, and the other year you're reading about sociology and contract law and jurisprudence out of nowhere. So it was very overwhelming for me as well to consider both things, and therefore I did not opted for mooting in my first year. And I started it in my second year, which was a very risky thing for me as well, because when you're starting in the second year, the subjects are kind of, they get more intense in second years and follow along the years as well. But it worked for me. I did my best in my intra, and therefore I was approached by my for international directly, and then afterwards as well I was approached for another international. So I had never an experience of participating in a national moot court, but I do have coached teams for nationals, remotely coaching, because I was president in 2023 of Mooting Society, and I had to look after the teams as well. So I kind of look after every team which was going for national. Now my friends have this experience as well, and they also had I also had asked them about this. So the major difference between the national and international moot court is first the rounds. Of course, uh, in national you got free with one set of rounds, 3 days, and you're finished. You get the trophy, or you do not get the trophy, you get home. But in international, when you get the trophy or when you are even in second place, a next level of war has started, and you're more busier than you were in national. So you have to prepare, and if it's Henry Dunant, then the mood problem also is changed. So in 3 months, you are learning for a national. You had made it a success, and in another 3 months you are going for another mood problem, and you have to make it a success. And now you are competing the teams from different areas of world. They will have many more good abilities than you. Of course, education system in Pakistan is not very worthy, I would say, in terms of if we are comparing it with the other foreign countries. So you will end up being competing with Oxford as well, like we did in the last moot court in Jessup, in our international rounds. The first day round was with we were applicants, where I was backing up sanctions, that sanctions are legal in every possible way. And my opponent was from a team of Oxford Law. Oxford Law's journals we are using here to kind of understand about sanctions, and then you're competing with Oxford team as well. So this is a very different episode of your life. And mooting brings so much joy and so much stress and tension as well, and so much new things. Like, who would ever think that I will be competing someday with Oxford as well? So first of all, in an environment and demeanor, it is very different from a national and international inputs. In national, you participate, you compete with the teams of your province or other provinces majorly. But this is altogether a new experience. And in terms of difficulty to pursue the judges as well, the national judges are quite different, while the international judges are completely different. So the tips and techniques that we are going for the national judges, which I will uncover in the third session. So you all have to hook up on that as well. Then the judges here are very different. They have a very different nature. They try to get a very different speakers thing. But in judges there, they had a very different approach to speakers as well. So in terms of that as well, the things are very different. And of course, if you are going in person for in-person rounds in Henry Dunant, because of COVID, in Hong Kong, we couldn't attend the sessions and the oral rounds in person. So we had to do it like we are doing it right now through online and first international moot court. So the anxieties were very high, but we managed to represent Pakistan. But of course, when you're going for international moot courts, there's a very high chances that you're not going forward in quarters or in semis, because of course the knowledge gap is very different. The things are very different. You have to do a moot court several times to get there. If I would have done Jessup this year as well, and inshallah, if we would have qualified for the international rounds, maybe then I could understand. Maybe then I could have make judges more understanding, make them pursue more. But this couldn't happen because I was the first time. That was first time. Last time I participated virtually, then I participated this time in person. So very different experience in terms of that. So these are the main things, and of course, in domestic law, there are hardly any international law involved. Either you'll get ICJ as a court, or you will get ICC as a court, or more specifically, a change of flavor, you'll get an arbitration. But as you just mentioned yourself as that Florida moot court that you are going for, I think that that was based on environmental law. So the topics also range very differently, and the judgment styles and of international moot courts of international law, quoting them, the binding sources. There are many things which differentiate from domestic courts and domestic moot courts as well. So yeah, this was my perspective on it. Any other questions? I hope that helps. Whoever is the Gulshan, you are here. Can you please give the platform to Alia? Alia has been raising the hand. Can you please allow her? Or Alia, we can just proceed with the importance of mooting, and you can type your question here. Okay, okay. Gulshan, you'll see. You can manage.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Am I audible?
Walaikum salam. Walaikum salam.
Yes. So a participant asked a question earlier. When he verbalized it, I don't think you got the question, and then he typed it out. So I think there was this important detail which he actually mentioned orally, and he was talking about the national rounds of a moot competition that he participated in which he used the Pakistan Penal Code. And the adjudicator reprimanded him and said that you can't use the penal code because that only lists the punishments. So my question is, are we supposed to, in national moot court competitions, limit ourselves to the legislation that is mentioned in the moot problem? Is that the case? Or can, if it's a criminal question involved, a criminal law question involved, can we actually discuss penal code, or what's the limit on that? As in, why can't we discuss it? Is it because of the punishments? Or is that something the judge decides? Is that why we're not supposed to discuss the penal code? That's the question.
Sorry, can you just confirm me that what kind of moot court you were participating in, and what was
It
the
wasn't
subject
me.
matter?
Sorry, it wasn't me. It was a question that an earlier participant in this session asked.
Yes.
He said it was the national round of a moot court competition that he had participated in.
All right.
And maybe in his memorial, I'm not sure, or in his oral arguments, he mentioned Pakistan Penal Code, and the judge commented that you're not supposed to make mention of the Pakistan Penal Code because the Pakistan Penal Code actually lists the punishments. Is that the restriction? Is that why the restriction is placed on mentioning the penal code, or are we supposed to just limit ourselves to the acts that are mentioned in the moot problem?
Okay, can you just give me an idea what the moot problem was about, so I can better answer your question in that way?
Okay, so I wasn't a participant in the moot, but this is all I know from that question. Are we not supposed to mention, let's say, because the punishments are only there, the penalty is only there in a criminal issue, right? Not in a civil case. So are we not supposed to go towards punishments in a moot competition? That's basically my question in general.
All right, I got you. Look, Alia, the thing is that when the mood problem is not specifically demanding a thing, and if that's unnecessary, so you should, limit yourself to not go there. If the mood problem, basically if the mood problem involves that workplace harassment, right? Now, or let's make it more simple, a rape case, right? We have a punishment for rape in PPC. But the mood problem is not asking for that thing. Mood problem is just asking whether, it is a more of a kind of factual question or more kind of procedural question, whether there was any kind of incident happened that that we can count it as a rape. So the issue itself is not asking you for the punishment of it. You can mention in the prayer as well to get that extra brownie points, but specifically mentioning it while you are pleading before the honorable court, uh, then it seems a bit, unnecessary maybe. Or I don't know if the speaker is, continuously was trying to uh, quote that PPC's sections which were not the demand of the question. Like if I am a judge, I'm asking you that can you tell me that the subject matter of this issue, like the rape, if we are going for the section of rape, there is a word involved, willful and consent. So consent and will. I'm asking you that whether the parties had consented to intimacy, or whether the parties had willfully willed for the intimacy. So I'm not asking you for the punishment of rape, right? I'm asking you this question. So if the judges are directing you, sometimes it happens that when you have to read the room as well, you have to read the judge's mind as well, and what they are asking as well, and what the issue in itself is demanding. So you have to confine it yourself to that. It doesn't specifically go in a way that you cannot quote sorry for the background voice, I cannot do anything about it, so bear it with me. But yeah, you cannot specifically, there's no hard and fast rule that you cannot use this penal law here, you can only use this here. This doesn't you cannot go with mooting in that way. Mooting is always done as a demand based thing. But whatever the judges are demanding, even sometimes what happens with us in the moot courts, sometimes we have to kind of close our files, not actually close it, but we do not have to look in our files, we do not have to follow the order of our submission, we have to only answer the judges. This has happened me twice. In my first intra, when the judges were asking me the questions, they were asking me questions from first issue and then directly from the second issue. So I had no time to follow my structure. I have to just answer the judge there. And in my international rounds in against the Oxford, I had to do the same. The judges were very interactive. When you get such a hot bench, we called it hot bench because when the judges are very interactive, they just throw the questions on you. We called it a hot bench. So you do not have to worry about your structure of submissions there or any kind of other law or other things. You just have to fulfill the demand of the judge, whatever he's asking you right now. That can be anything. So, you have to kind of be very attentive when you are on the dice, and you have to kind of see what the judges are really demanding in that moment. And I don't know what happened with your colleague in that moot court. If the judge has pointed out that you do not necessarily need to point out penal laws here, then that means that there was no need, and there was no, even if there was need and the judge is not trying understanding, sometimes you have to leave it on the judge. Okay, fine. Your Excellency is not getting my point. Your Excellency doesn't want to go there, and I will not go there. I hope that helped. Yes, Mohammad Umar.
Hello. Am I audible?
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes.
So I was like asking the same question earlier. but I think you didn't get that to the point. The thing was, I was participating in CLLB Moot Court National Moot Court competition, and there we had a civil case of harassment. Where the accused just touched the shoulder of a girl without her consent, and we related that touch to the section 350 of the PPC, that is criminal force. By making that argument, the judge and the adjudicator directly pointed to us, and he criticized us in such a way that you can't told the adjudicators here about the penal laws here, because penal laws are meant for the punishment, and this bench is not meant for the punishment. Actually, he actually said that you can't even put them in penal laws in the prayer and relief, because you can't direct a court or a bench to do certain thing, or to do give to have a certain punishment to a particular person. It is like up to the their own discretion to decide the case.
You just mentioned that you were pleading on a civil case, right? The harassment case, and it didn't involve any kind of penal laws there, right? So when you are going for a civil case, you have to confine yourself in the civil thing. Just just as I mentioned earlier, whenever you are going for the, you have to understand the nature of the law as well. In just I quoted that in ICJ you cannot specifically talk about the Rome Statute. You can refer at some points that in further in this incident and that incident, otherwise as well, but you cannot specifically direct the bench that in a civil case you can go for the penal applications. So there you made a mistake, of course. Mr. Judge pointed out that in a civil case where the harassment is involving and they are viewing it in a civil scenario, you cannot use a section of, what you use is criminal force. Now, touching a shoulder in a very essential way to make that person uncomfortable doesn't involve anything or doesn't go near to the criminal force there. So I do not know what kind of, uh, the arguments you had placed before the judge or the connectivity between these two. I do not know how you made it, but to my best knowledge, even if I was the judge there, I would have told you the same thing, that you cannot go there, because these are two completely different things. The criminal force that you are talking about, criminal force is basically hitting other person. What I think is. But this is something else. This is harassment. These two falls in other categories. Mm. So I hope that helped. Are we having any other questions? Or is Mr. Omar satisfied with my answer? Okay, clear. So the last topic that for today's session is the importance of mooting. Like why we are focusing so much on mooting. There must be something. Now I don't know what has happened to the screen sharing. I do not understand why the screen is not sharing. Are you guys able to see it?
Yes, ma'am.
The screen sharing, the PPT slides? Okay, so let's go for the importance of moot court. Now, if we start with the moot court, the first thing and the foremost important thing is that networking. and confidence. You know, the crux of the mooting is in the networking and the confidence that it brings to you. Today, if I'm able to speak in front of you, and if I'm able to take answers, take questions from you and answer it confidently. In my scenario, if I am at least confident. I don't know about you, what you guys think about it, but you know, that really voting really builds that confidence in you, because you are being faced by the judges, you are being faced by the different people. You know, a different set of people are in a bench together. One judge is very calm and composed, other judge is very violent, and by violent I mean he's very aggressive to when he's asking the questions. The third judge is very, you know, in the middle way, some asking questions and then giving the time to the speaker as well. So you face three different kinds of judges in a in a single bench. This really helps you, you know, elaborate your confidence. And there are other people in the room as well. Always the room is not quite and not exactly quite, but the room is not, you know, you're not standing alone. You have your participants, your opponents there, you have audience there, and when you are, you know, going for finals, there is such a big audience in the hall rooms that happens, where you, and sometimes it's recording as well, like in international moot courts, the final teams, you can see them on the YouTube as well. The whole session is recorded as well. So confidence is the major aspect that it gives you, and that's what one of the things that mooting achieves, the moot court activities are trying to achieve, that the students are confident to face the judges tomorrow in the real moot courts as well. And networking, of course, when you are, you know, engaged in such kind of activity, like how I am engaged in today's activity. So I have a network with the Concord Law, right? Now tomorrow, if anything happens, or anything that I would like to get from Concord Law, maybe we can collaborate. In last you know, the provincial moot court, which was organized by Concord itself again in March, I guess 24. Yes, 24. So there was a provincial moot court which was organized by the Concord, and I was there. I was judging the teams there as well. So that's how networking works. In future, inshallah, if we are the litigants, then we can, you know, forward the cases to each another. We can understand as well. We can have any kind of other, you know, collaborations as well. So this is how networking really works, and it really makes you reaches to the point that you are also going to different places with it. Secondly, the research skills are you know, your research skills get blown away. When I have compared my drafts from first year, when I was making you know, researching about simple things like jurisprudence, like law itself, or because I was very enthusiastic about law itself. I chose this degree myself, so I was kind of very intrusive about it, that I have to understand the things I have to write. And of course, the COVID also hit. So I had plenty of time to do as well. And now if I compare that draft of mine and towards now that I write, now that I research, there's a very big gap, a very different things that I have able to, you know, gain unconsciously or consciously. Now I could write legal articles, but before I could, you know, could consider it as a legal article, but it was not a legal article that time, which I, you know, just wrote. So there's, of course, it really makes you able to do that. And other thing is advocacy, of course, when you are advocating in front of judges, when you are, you know, pursuing them to understand your point of view and to rule in your favor, it is what advocacy means. And the drafting skills also drastically improves. Just I had mentioned, it comes with the research skills. When you are researching and then you are putting it in a draft and an outcome, so it's a very different thing. So these are the major things that, you know, helps you in your 5 years as well. Not the future things, but in during your 5 years as well. These things helps you a lot, and by a lot I do mean a lot. And the other thing is that scrutinizing law and identifying gaps. Okay, this is the most fun part of mooting. Because of mooting, you are able to, you know, you're able to kind of go in that issue. You are kind of we are able to read between the lines. You just do a thing that whenever a situation is given to you in the shape of a problem, and a law is given to you, the commentaries and all the other things, you kind of you know, search it out and add that and apply in your thing. So you also kind of understand that what are the gaps are mentioned there, because if law is been filled with the gaps, when you are you and that gaps are also that gaps always helps you when you are asking the judges for ruling in your favor. Otherwise how would you can even plead towards on that loss. So now I am able to understand, even when I'm studying for my academics, when I'm studying for my uh you know for my semesters, I could tell that this law is wrong here. This particular section should not be there, or should be modified as well. So unconsciously it just fits in your mind that you can understand the gaps and identify the laws as well. And then of course the experiences that it gets you, the good resume that that builds, that moot course helps you build it. Because when you are doing a mooting activity, you are just starting with intra, of course, right? Then you are going for nationals or internationals. Then you're also, if you are done with participation, you're okay, you're fine with participation, like now you have to stop it. You then go for coaching as well. So another experience of coaching as well added. And if you have a good leadership skills, then you are also even kind of approached by your administration for such important positions like presidency of voting society, which is a lot of task to do. So this also adds in your experiences and resumes. So whenever you'll forward your CV or your resume to any recruiter, he or she will surely show that this guy or girl has a good terms of a good experience, and I should certainly hire him or her to. Because this also, it is very different, like participating and then coaching, then organizing an administrative position, then even now I'm giving lectures. So altogether these four are very different but still connected things. So it also makes other person to understand that this person has capability to fit any kind of role. And of course that leadership and team player, when the best aspect of mooting is whenever you are mooting with your team. Of course you cannot moot without them. So the team player thing is really important. You can be best in as individual, you can be a best speaker, best researcher, but if you are not a team player, your team is not gonna win. If you do not have a good bonding with your team, you do not understand what the other person is trying to convey you cannot work together, you cannot organize things or draft memorial or research or discuss about the laws together, and you cannot even help them improve when you are practicing for your oral rounds. Then do anything but you cannot win. I have always seen this. The key to winning is good team and good team player and sportsmanship in your thing. Always go and help and reach out to your colleagues. Do not order them. By helping out you are not able to, I'm not asking you for ordering them, okay, you have to do this by this time. Leave their work to themselves. Do your work. And if you have time, do their work as well. If by being humble, not being in that scenario, okay, I did your work, you are not able to do it, it's okay. In a team, not everyone will have same quality. Some person will be best speaker and some will be a best researcher. But combining that forces with you and acting in a team will really lead you to win. This has happened with me in both of movements. So that's how I was able to secure championship in Henry and the runner-upship in the Jazz national rounds. So this is how it really, and you do not have to wait for other person to be humble, to start a team player or a team bonding thing. You have to start it on your own and think good about them. First of all, do not think low of them. If you will ever by any aspect will think low about them, you will think that okay, that person doesn't know English, doesn't know researching, he's not or is only knowing English enough to speak well, kind of. So that's not gonna work it. Lastly, the internship opportunities. Lastly, the internship opportunities that it brings to you. Whenever you are submitting your CV to internships, like I did an internship in 2023 in July, of INSAF camp internship, and they selected me because of my writings. They selected me because of my good academics, balancing the moot courts together, and it also helped me in a kind of build a network with the other participants, and also there are many things. My colleagues are doing many more internships. We in Hyderabad have a limited sources of in-person internships, so we have to kind of go for the virtual internships in Lahore. But whoever is listening from Lahore or Punjab side, they have a plenty of opportunities in the law firms, and they'll hire you if you have different kind of experiences added in your CV. So altogether, mooting brings you a different arena. And even if you have an international exposure, the other person will think that, okay, this person has an ability to rocket in international rounds as well, to go in a foreign land and to consider their readings and their just day-to-day activities. Like we were in Washington DC last April for 11 or 12 days, and we were going for the rounds. We were meeting with different teams. We were networking with them. Many are added in our social media handles. So that involves meeting also brings you that thing. And now we also chat. Sometimes we also go discuss on the genocide of Gaza that is going on right now. So this also inbuilds a very large acumen is there for you guys if you start it right. If you go for the moving in a right direction, you go for the learning of skills. So it really helps you. So yeah, that's all from my side. I am done teaching you for the first lecture. I hope that it helped you a lot, guys. And if any other query that you are having right now, you can freely ask.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rachna. It was wonderful, fruitful session. We are really thankful to you for your precious time. So over to you, all participants.